Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. My professionals join me. Thaddeus McCotter, WJR, the great voice of the Great Lakes. John Funn, National Review Online. David Drucker, the Washington Examiner. We're immediately speaking of the Roberts Court and the surprising decisions, surprising is an understatement, these last days from Mr. Roberts' court. Unpredictable is another word. Completely creative is a third. We're going to begin with the predictable tragedy of the Republican Party right now. There is always a risk when you use Donald Trump's name that people will not take the conversation soberly. However, events of these last hours point to a problem that the Republican Party must deal with eventually or immediately. The Republican Party very much depends upon attracting a sizable Latino vote in the 2016 election. It has two candidates, major candidates, Senator Cruz from Texas and Senator Rubio from Florida, who have Latino backgrounds, Latino origins. It has three candidates, adding Jeb Bush, who speak Spanish and could have a debate in Spanish language television, Univision, which is why it is significant to note that Univision rejected Donald Trump after his remarks about Mexicans, about Latinos. And then today, NBC ended all relationship with Donald Trump, all of his television shows, his beauty contests, everything, the end. These events mean that the Republican Party now has a problem, what to do with it. And I begin with David Drucker. The two Latino origin, both Cuban origin candidates and Jeb Bush, but the whole Republican Party. Reince Priebus has been very straightforward to the fact that they're looking to convince a sizable number of Latino voters in 2016 that the Republican brand is safe and about prosperity and growth for all families. David, is the Trump matter something that's going to blow over? Because this is headlines right now. Trump gone from TV. Good evening to you, David.
John, and look, I think that there are enough candidates, and particularly this time around of enough diversity, that they can get around the Trump time bomb. I think the danger for them is that the longer he is in the race and the more debates that he might qualify for, and at least at the moment, he could be on track to qualify for the first one. We'll see. That's where it gets tricky, because he is prone to say completely outrageous things in public, and unless they are willing to gang up on him when he goes overboard and call him out on it and say that it has no place in their party, then it's just going to trail them around like a ball and chain. But you know, that means there's a solution. Gang up on him, call him out on his crazy remarks, and then they will have nothing to answer for.
Mr. Funn, Donald Trump, he's a burden now. Does the party wait for him to leave the stage, or does it nudge him?
Well, first of all, I'm highly amused that NBC decided to dump Donald Trump for his offensive comments and continues to employ Al Sharpton as one of their premier hosts. Hypocrisy, thy name is NBC. However, having said that, the Republicans do have to do something about Trump, and I think that the problem Trump presents for them is he has spread a lot of cash around local and state Republican parties. He has ingratiated himself with a lot of activists. But I think the Republican Party simply has to say, even if it's something as simple as he does not speak for us, we do not agree with him, and he's welcome to run in our primaries, that does not mean that he won't have to answer for the fact that he often has not represented Republican values in the past. After all, Mr. Trump was a Democrat until late 2009, and he has never properly explained that.
Thaddeus, your comments on this especially acute because Trump's remarks are unacceptable in any event. So how does the party deal with it?
Well, I think they have to do it directly, as David and John have both pointed out, be very upfront about it. I think Mr. Funn was very helpful in pointing out that Donald Trump was a Democrat until 2009. I'm just surprised by the fact that people associate him with the Republican Party. He seems to be somebody who's out for himself. And I think if they do put forward the message that this is not where the Republican Party is, especially senators such as Cruz and Rubio leading that attack, I think we can stop Donald Trump from doing to the GOP what he did to the USFL.
John, you're just back from Greece, and so we have to check that box off only because it's a fascination to watch a country self-destruct like this. Tsipras, the Alexis Tsipras, the very romantic-looking prime minister, made a television address that looked very old-fashioned, telling people to remain calm. But as I understand, his response to the Brexit crisis is to raise taxes. Is that right, John?
Well, his party, Syriza, is a collection of 7 or 8 neo-Marxist, crazy, verging on anarchist, environmental wacko parties. And to expect sound governance from them would be like expecting sobriety from a drunk. It's just not going to happen. What's most disturbing about what Mr. Tsipras said in his speech was, remain calm. Oh, and by the way, I'm not going to tell you that from now on, you're going to be limited to $66 a day per person out of your ATM.
What we're looking at in Greece is going to continue to spill over in the conversation about the proper way to run a state. But right now, Europe is looking very soggy for investors. So I want to turn back to our problems. Gentlemen, we have right now a story about the Roberts Court. I was being facile, saying it's unpredictable. David, it's the day after the day after the day after. And today, the Roberts Court delivered 5-4, a more predictable conservative decision rejecting the EPA's intention to manage electric generation in this country because it didn't like the fuel. But has the Roberts Court damaged itself for the Republican Party?
Well, I think in the short term, but not necessarily in the long term, because who knows what cases are going to come before the court in the future that'll change people's opinion. I think that for Republican activists in today's world, Roberts will always be damaged goods because of the Obamacare decision, and that was made doubly worse by the second Obamacare decision. And yet, in the gay marriage decision, he was where they think he should be and where they always expected him to be. But the court's also, over the next 10 years, most likely going to change composition as we have like 4 members of the court in their late 70s and 80s, and they're not going to go on forever. So then that will change what the Roberts Court is. I think that it was just a very tough back-to-back week of decisions for conservative activists and Republicans who thought that having Roberts, having 4 reliable members plus Kennedy should have been enough on these decisions, or at least the Obamacare decision, and it just didn't turn out to be.
Thaddeus, you have a question for Mr. Fund.
Yes. John, is there any chance that after decades of seeing Republican-appointed members of the Supreme Court veer left repeatedly, that at some point the conservative activist base is no longer going to be galvanized with the cry of, we must do this to keep the Supreme Court?
Well, the prospects of what could happen under a liberal-dominated court, I think, should engage their attention. I think in the future, conservatives, all the way from the grassroots activists that I encountered at the Western Conservative Summit I just attended in Denver, to the Federalist Society members, all of them are saying, we are no longer going to accept anyone who isn't nailed down in terms of their commitment to our view of the Constitution. Famously, Samuel Alito embraced the Federalist Society membership he had when he was nominated to the Supreme Court. John Roberts pretended he had never been a member of the Federalist Society. That is what we call a clue as to future behavior. No more appointees to the Supreme Court who claim the Federalist Society is some ugly stepchild they don't recognize.
John Fund, David Drucker, and Thaddeus McCotter, my professionals. When we come back, the Republican contest without Trump. We're going to speak of the new entries, Governor Jindal, Governor Kasich, and Governor Christie. 3 governors to step up to the plate, and the number now, I think it's 14, 15, 16, 17. We'll see. I'm John Batchelor.